Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting of the Finance Committee to order, please. Doug, are there any public speakers?
Yes, sir. We have 3 public speakers today, the first being Murray Bowden.
This morning at the joint meeting of the Metro-North and Long Island Railroad, I recommended that the presidents of both railroads be replaced for cause they are breaking the law and creating a financial liability for the MTA. At the Bridge and Tunnel meeting this morning, I recommended that the chief engineer be replaced for cause for creating a financial liability for the MTA. The documentation for these recommendations is in emails that I have provided to the board in the past. If there are any questions as to why these 3 people should not be immediately replaced, I will be glad to meet and provide additional documentation for it as necessary. The other issue I need to discuss is positive train control, which I will discuss in the next meeting, but to lay the groundwork for it, positive train control is pretty much like the Selectric typewriter. It was designed before 2007, and Thomas Friedman, in his book, Thank You for Being Late, describes the basis of the change in technology. It's an obsolete system, which I will go into further in the next committee meeting. But being this is finance, you need to seriously think about the waste of money in a technology that is completely obsolete.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden. The next speaker, Jason Pinero.
After hearing that bozo brainless person, good afternoon to all, especially Freddie, Susan, Andrew, and all the rest. First things first, we have to consider, like I always say, spend the money wisely and not throw all the money like we was multi-billionaires. We're not that way. And I think second of all, we should look for alternative technologies to support our new fare payment system, like in Philly, that they already have contactless fare payment system that you simply tap and go. I visited Philly back in April, and I experienced it myself. And I'm glad that we're updating all our equipment, all everything, but we still need to invest money to maintain our equipment, that our system doesn't collapse and doesn't return to the 70s and 80s, that they are knocking our doors. And we don't want to see the MTA declaring itself bankruptcy. We don't want that. So, you represent us. I hope that each of you tell your county executives, those who represent outside of New York City's interest, to tell their county executives to put money into the MTA financial system. Because let's put this scenario: a person who travels from Long Island.
Could you please conclude your remarks?
I'm gonna do it in a minute. If a person travels from Westchester or Long Island, has to use the subway system. So let's put the money in the table and let's upgrade the system, shall we?
Thank you, Mr. Pinero. Finally, we have Omar
Excuse me.
Vera.
Can I be recognized for a second?
Sure.
I think it's highly inappropriate that comments like brainless and whatever else get said here. Now, somebody has got to maintain some sense of decorum. We have an amount of time for public comment. Those guidelines should be adhered to. And the decorum of public comment should be respectful. And if it's not, then I'm going to start making motions that people that don't respect the decorum of this room and the previous speakers or those of us on this board, I'm going to make a motion that they not be allowed in here or to make public comment. I'm not here to be insulted or abused, and I don't think any of the other people who are making comments are. So at some point, this has got to stop. So I just want to be clear that in the future, that's what I'm going to do. I think all of us here have an obligation to make sure that these meetings are conducted with some sense of decorum, and all of us are entitled to some sense of respect.
Commissioner Ward, your points are well taken, and I give you my word as Chair of Finance, if it happens again and if on a going forward basis, I will address it with the individual speakers.
Okay, thank you. Omar Vera.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Finance Committee. I'd like to recommend a couple recommendations. First, let's try to set. Let's try to ask the government for cash first to abandon Air Training LaGuardia plan, and instead extend the N&W storyline to LaGuardia Airport. I've been repeatedly mentioning this, and I feel like that should go through. Second, Jason made a very good point regarding tap and go. I think it's a very effective system, and it will reduce the chance of a constant holdup like delay for when trying to swipe the cards, because that's very often. Very often that happens when you try to swipe a MetroCard. It says, please swipe again turnstile. And of course, if you try with an unlimited card, it is just used. And that it can't, we need a better system with that. And I believe the MTA has the funds for this. Third and final thing, please, like I said, don't, tell the government no more cuts. We need more investment, because the money should go here, not anywhere else. That's unnecessary. Oh, and one more thing. Thanks for the station enhancement initiative. We're going to need more of that. All right, and thanks, and have a good day.
Thank you, Doug. Next, we have the approval of the September 25th minutes. And may I have a motion to approve the minutes? Second? All those in favor? Minutes are approved. Doug, can you take us through the work plan?
There are no changes to the work plan. And next is Budget Watch. So this month's Budget Watch, we're going to focus on operating results through September and subsidy cash results through October. And we're comparing those actuals against the mid-year forecast that was part of the July financial plan. So we're going to start with operating results and passenger revenues. Those were $4.4 million below the mid-year forecast in September, which increased the unfavorable year-to-date variance to $18.7 million. That's primarily the result of lower subway and bus ridership. In the case of MTA Bus, they were slightly favorable for September and year-to-date. Metro North was slightly unfavorable for the month and year-to-date, while the LIRR was on target for both the month and year-to-date. Moving to toll revenue. Moving to toll revenue, that was favorable in September, remaining slightly unfavorable year-to-date. As was discussed at the prior meeting, that's reflecting a lower average toll due to higher Easy Pass usage. Moving to preliminary expenses in September, those are $3 million favorable, which increased the year-to-date favorable variance to $148 million, or 1.6%. Now, some of that was health and welfare savings that were driving some of the favorable result, but a lot of the variance does appear to be timing related, which those tend to reverse over time. Within the expense totals were overtime expenses for the month that were $14.6 million or 25.7% unfavorable. And year-to-date overtime results were $54 million or 9.1% unfavorable. And those numbers do include some of the costs for the subway recovery plan requirements. Moving to debt service, they were $8.5 million favorable for the month, $25 million favorable year-to-date. I'm going to now move to subsidies. Total subsidies in October were unfavorable by $27 million, which increased the year-to-date unfavorable variance to $32.2 million. Now, lower real estate transaction tax collections are responsible for about 2/3 of this result, and as we've discussed in recent months, that's reflecting some weakness in the real property transfer tax in New York City. If you compare those numbers through last October, we're down about $233 million, or 21%. There was some remaining subsidy decline due to lower payroll mobility tax receipts in the month of October, but we think some of that is timing. We're not too concerned about that. So if we were to summarize all these results, we would say they were slightly unfavorable for the month. They remain favorable year-to-date. As I already said, the favorable expense variance will probably reverse in time, but we are concerned about the continuing unfavorable results in passenger and toll revenue and urban tax collections. Any questions?
Doug, this ties to something in the joint Metro-North Long Island Railroad book. The year-to-date commutation was down 1% for Metro-North and down 1.3% Long Island Railroad. Is that something we're forecasting into our next budget, that we're seeing that material change?
Yeah, so all the trends.
One point is, for us, that's actually meaningful point.
Yeah, so next month you'll see revised forecasts that are going to have all these trends in them, and not only the impact on this year, but to the extent that it would impact future year forecasts as well. That's it. Okay. That concludes Finance Watch.
Okay. Good afternoon. Finance Watch appears on page 20 of your committee materials today. A few transactions to report. The first is MTA Transportation Revenue refunding green bonds at 2017B. This was a refunding of portions of 8 series of outstanding bonds for savings. As you can see here in your statistics, the all-in true interest cost for the transaction was 1.98%. Present value savings achieved of $79.568 million, or 10.95% of the refunded bonds. We were very pleased with this transaction. It was managed by Citigroup as a rotating assignment, together with Drexel Hamilton, a disabled veteran-owned firm, Stern Brothers, a woman-owned firm, and Blaylock Van, a minority-owned firm. So next we have $400 million of TBTA bond anticipation notes, 2017A. These notes were put out for competitive bidding. As you can see here, we achieved an all-in true interest cost of 1.23%, and portions of the notes were won by Citigroup, Morgan Stanley, Barclays, Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan, and RBC listed there. Most recently, we remarketed 2 series of transportation variable rate refunding variable rate bonds, the 2011 Bs and the 2012 G4s. This was senior managed by Jeffries with Academy Securities, Alamo Securities, and Cabrera Capital Markets. What we achieved in the market was very successful. We achieved a 5-year floating rate note at a spread of 55 basis points to the index, and that one just closed. Next, last week we bid out $1 billion of MTA Transportation Revenue bond anticipation notes 2017C. These will be used for ongoing transit and commuter capital projects. The yield curve provided very strong results. We had a total of 166 bids for the notes from 13 different bidders, And as you can see, or actually not in your book, we achieved an all-in true interest cost of 1.15% for the notes that were bid out in 2 tranches. The first $500 million will be due February 15th, 2019. The second $500 million will be due on May 15th of 2019. So that was, again, a very successful transaction. Coming up, we have another variable rate remarketing that we'll work on this week with Morgan Stanley as the senior manager. This is $165 million of transportation variable refunding bonds, and we'll be looking to put these in the FRN market, hopefully with the same success as prior transactions. We do have some upcoming refundings of TBTA 2017C. We're targeting approximately $500 million. We'll see what the market conditions will allow for and what interest is, and we'll report back on that. And then lastly, we have a diesel fuel hedge to report. On September 22nd, we executed 2.9 million ULSD diesel hedge through competitive bidding. It was won by Goldman Sachs, J. Aaron, at an all-in price of $1.72 a gallon. All of our bidders participated, and the hedge covers the period September of 2018 through August of 2019. And that concludes Finance Watch.
Okay, next we're moving to MTA HQ and all agency items. There's one action item, and that's the resolution to authorize the execution, filing, and acceptance of federal funds. The MTA Capital Programs Department is seeking MTA Board approval to file for and accept federal grants for federal fiscal years 2017 and 2018.
Any questions? Motion? Second. All those approved?
Okay. We have for headquarters 5 report and information items. Pat, would you like to take the first one? It's the annual review of the MTA's derivative portfolio.
Okay, thank you. Do we have the? Okay. This is our annual report on our derivatives portfolio. Our derivatives program is intended to reduce budget risk by employing interest rate derivatives and fuel hedging strategies. Our synthetic fixed rate portfolio remains low cost at a rate of fully loaded rate of 4.18% versus 3.65% for a traditional long-term fixed rate portfolio. And I would just note that that includes historic low rates that we've been able to achieve over the past decade. Our fuel hedging program mitigates budget risk by dollar cost averaging half of our ULSD needs. And we currently have 24 hedges outstanding with 5 counterparties, final maturity of 2019, and an average locked-in rate for the next 12 months of $1.61 a gallon. So we'll just quickly run through our interest rate portfolio here. As you can see, our total portfolio is predominantly fixed. Over 86.6% is in fixed rate mode. Today we're talking about the green slice on the pie here of 6.7% or $2.395 billion of synthetic fixed rate borrowing. We've achieved success through this program over a long period of time. We believe that our exposure to liquidity events is manageable with a total variable rate debt load of 4.7. That's combining our unhedged with our hedge, allocated between bank facilities and floating rate notes. Our outstanding synthetic fixed rate debt is declining and remains low cost. The average, the weighted average time on the entire portfolio is 11 years. Again, 4.18%, and that includes all fees, excluding the benefit of upfront payments, which in some cases we received. Synthetic fixed rate exposure continues to be manageable in our opinion. And then on this slide here, we provide a summary of all of our exposures on the interest rate products, the entities that were hedged, that were counterpartied against the swap counterparty, the ratings of those entities, the notional amount hedged, and the mark-to-markets. And I would just note those mark-to-markets are theoretical replacement values and don't have any strong impact on our budget or on our operating budget. We do continue to seek opportunities to to strengthen the portfolio by looking at the overall financial strength of the counterparties, and when opportunities present themselves, we will enter into novations and come back to the board and report those as needed. Fuel hedging, this is a program we've talked a lot about. The goal of the program is to hedge half of the cost of our ULSD need, and that's predominantly for MTA bus, but as well for diesel-powered locomotives at both railroads. The hedges are procured through a competitive bidding process with pre-approved counterparties, and as you can see here, those counterparties are Merrill Lynch, J. Aron, which is a Goldman Sachs division, J.P. Morgan, Macquarie Energy, and Cargill. Cargill is our most recent entry into the program, and they were added in February of 2017. This slide gives you a sense of how the hedging program has worked. As you can see, the gray bars are the gallons hedged. The green bar is the percent of gallons hedged, and again, we're aiming to achieve that 50% level. And then the blue combined with the gray shows our expected total ULSD need, and this covers the full period that we're hedged for out into August of 2019. Again, the goal is the goal of the program is to be 50% hedged for the next 12 months. As you can see, we are. So when we lay on a new hedge, it will begin in November of 2018 and extend for a 24-month period after that. The hedge price locks in a portion of fuel budget assumptions, and as you can see, this slide is intended to show how that works, the hedge price versus the budget forecast. The 2017 adopted budget, you see the top blue line, those are our assumptions for the cost of fuel. And then the dashed line provides a 2018 preliminary budget, the July plan assumptions based on ULSD futures, and the green dots show our hedge price locked in for that portion of the monthly fuel spend. Lastly, the hedge program is intended to provide budget stability while protecting against commodity price spikes. As we know, the price of fuel can always go up, and there's no limit to how high it can go. The bottom end is zero. So we're looking to protect those high spikes in prices, and by hedging half the program, we believe we've achieved that goal. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions on either interest rates or fuel hedging. Okay, thank you.
Next, we have Wael Hibri. He's going to update the board, the committee on the Business Service Center.
Thank you, Doug. While the slides are being loaded, when I reported back in June about the consolidation of procurement, we were at the highest peak in our workload. At the time, we had 2,700, almost 2,100 requisitions from all of the agents, almost all of the agencies that were sent into the BSC, and we only had 37 filled positions in a department of 112. And we've done quite a bit to turn this around. Today, we have 1,500 requisitions all told. We are going to break that, as Commissioner Schwartz has asked us, into different categories, RFPs versus bids versus emergency procurements and so on, and put estimated deliveries. In future reports, we will go ahead and provide that. But for the time being, what I'm showing here is a significant reduction, 46% of the workload since June. And we have also reduced the number of days it takes us to take a requisition that is fully approved into an awarded contract or a purchase orders. We used to take 124 days on average. Now we are taking 114 days on average and going downward as well. And to be able to accomplish that, we deployed a number of strategies. We took similar requisitions and we combined them into one procurement action that was bigger and able to save us money on volume discounts. We hired consultants to help us with the workload. They're not decision makers, but they are helping us process transactional work. We implemented contract release function, especially for New York, Long Island Railroad, that needed that to progress their own work faster. And we used inherent functionality in PeopleSoft. We did strategic sourcing, auto dispatching, and auto closeout for requisitions or purchase orders within the system. One point of example is fuel. We used to have about 300 requisitions a year for fuel. Almost every time a tank is fully filled, we would have someone enter a requisition to process an invoice. We cut the process down to a contract release where the receiver of the fuel will ascertain that the right amount of fuel was delivered, enter a receipt in PeopleSoft, and allow us to honor an invoice and pay an invoice. That cuts out quite a bit of processing and ensures that the vendor gets paid very quickly. On the staffing side, we have 112 total positions. 81 are filled. That includes 9 positions that are responsible for inventory that are coming momentarily from New York City Transit to join our team at the BSC. We have 31 vacancies today, but we are actively recruiting them as well, and we hope that we will have those significantly filled in short order. And we'll continue with the 22 onboard consultants, and we're adding an additional 4. And we're enticing these consultants to hopefully consider the MTA as a place they would apply to and stay on as permanent employees as well. The savings that are listed in front of us are from procurements as such, and we will calculate the savings that will come from consolidation in a future report when we have achieved steady state in the procurement department. Moving on to our services overview, the BSC offers the MTA services in 3 main areas. Procurement, where we handle all non-core procurement, meaning anything that is not track, signal, bus, or train. We handle finance transactions such as accounting, accounts payable, accounts receivable for the MTA, as well as payroll. And human resource transactions such as employment. We receive resumes and parse those and distribute them. Human resource administration, training, testing, and benefits. And those functions are supported by 3 back office functions for us. Business operations is one of our units. Governance, where we get input from the agencies on how we're performing and how we need to change our processes. And a unit from IT that is assigned to the BSC to work on PeopleSoft as well. The next slide shows our annual workload. I won't go through every little topic, but just to give you an idea, we have 19 payroll groups at the MTA. As a point of comparison, the state of New York has approximately 3 or 4 pay groups. And the reason for our large number of pay groups is we came from many different agencies with different labor agreements and different pay cycles. And that is something that we continually work on to try to simplify so that we can be more efficient and spend more time doing auditing and quality assurance rather than actual processing with heads down processing. Those 19 payroll groups result in 2.3 million payments a year. And we have 43 employees who do this work. In accounts payable, we receive 450,000 invoices a year, and we consolidate similar invoices to the same vendor, and we end up paying 325,000 payments per year, or $11 billion annually, and that's handled by 38 FTEs. Our big volume area is also receipt of resumes and job applications. We receive 491,000 applications a year through our website, and we execute 9,000 hires for the agencies, which includes reviewing the resumes, bundling them up, sending them to the agency, waiting for the agency to make a decision, and then entering the transaction in PeopleSoft. That's approximately 750 new hires per month. Overall, if you look at the bottom of your slide, we provide services to 73,000 employees, 143,000 dependents, 48,000 retirees, and 16,000 vendors. And we do that with 438 employees, supported by an additional 100 employees from the IT department. Can we go to the next slide? Perfect. So the BSC was established to deliver savings and avoid unnecessary costs. And compared to cost product or the cost data prior to the BSC, our run cost is $14.3 million less. We've picked up work that was done in the agencies worth $2.5 million a year that we do at the BSC. Those include benefits billing and massive HRIS uploads. And finally, by consolidating several human resource platforms into one platform, we avoid the cost of about $84 million every 5 to 7 years, which is the cost of maintaining these systems, upgrading them, and keeping them current with security patches. So over the last year, our accomplishments have been we performed a dependent verification audit that saved us $5.5 million to make sure that everyone is on the right plan and everyone is covered as they're supposed to. We implemented an early payment program. Early payment allows us to pay vendors early if they offer us additional discounts beyond those that are in the contract, and those total $362,000 a year. We implemented a fuel procurement that consolidated 11 contracts from 6 vendors into one contract that made it a lot easier for us to administer, as well as made it cheaper for the agencies. And we densified the usage of the space at the BSC. By adding procurement, we needed an additional 95 seats at the Business Service Center, and we did so by downsizing the size of the cubicles to what would be MTA headquarters standard sizes, and that saved us $1.1 million. Even when we back out the cost of the new furniture. And on the right-hand side of the slide, we've performed our responsibilities in terms of keeping the platform current. We've converted benefits to one single vendor through a competitive process, that's Aetna, that impacted 141,000 individuals. We upgraded the interactive voice response system at the BSC, implemented all of the retroactive wage adjustments according to schedule, and improved process. I won't go through every bullet, but we've done our part to make sure our platform is current and up to date. Our current projects are focused in 3 areas: improving customer service. That's an area we continually focus on, and we desire to be more serviceable to our customers, be they vendors or employees. Better internal controls, and improving the technology that we are using. And so here's a list of what's going on currently. We are implementing a workforce management tool at our call center that ensures that, knowing historical data from the number of calls we receive, we are adequately staffed to pick up the phone timely and responding to questions. We're implementing an e-benefits module that will help us through open enrollment and life event changes. In finance, we implemented a refund process for the token. Since we have open road tolling, a lot of tokens were recalled and were refunded, and we needed to establish that for bridges and tunnels. We implemented the treasury module for MTA bridges and tunnels, and we simplified payroll as well. We put LIRR from 2 pay groups to 1, and we're shifting the MTA bus paycheck from a Wednesday to a Thursday schedule, which allows us again to combine pay groups together. We're paying our Medicare retirees via ACH instead of paper check at this time. From a procurement point of view, we're expanding the marketplace so that individuals can have an Amazon-like experience when they need to shop for commodities as part of their job. And we're increasing our focus on compliance and internal controls in procurement as well. We have a competitive procurement active right now because we want to benchmark the performance of the BSC against peers of a similarly sized company, and we're converting our forms from legacy forms where individuals would print them out to interactive forms that directly feed PeopleSoft. We are automating our onboarding process in PeopleSoft, and we're moving one pension plan from a very expensive mainframe platform into PeopleSoft, so it is with the rest of it, with the rest of PeopleSoft, I mean. And here's a listing of our future plans for 2018 and 2019. I will not go through them, Mr. Chairman, but I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, let me just acknowledge the improvements that you've made since the last time you came here. I think I can speak not only for myself, but for other members of the Finance Committee that we're looking forward to continuing to make significant improvements in the backlog and shortening the processing time. My top priority as chair of the Finance Committee, and I've said this in the past, so it's not going to come as anything new to anyone who's actually heard me or paid attention is what I've been saying, but I think the most important area that we need to make improvements on is not only the procurement process, but the whole contracting process. The greatest savings in my mind that will come to the MTA is from reforming and improving our entire procurement and contracting system. I think hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, could be saved if we do a better job, not only in the way we procure, but the way we contract. We need to create competition in the contracts that we bid on. And the only way that's going to happen is through doing more design build. The only way that's going to happen is for our own bureaucracy to get out of the way of the industry, to provide assurance in terms of timely decision-making. But we need to get more players in the game because, as far as I'm concerned right now, we have the same old bidders bidding on the same old contracts, and all they do is come in with inflated pricing because they know there's going to be the delays, and they factor in the cost of those delays by bidding up the number. And that doesn't do the agency a bit of good, nor that it does the riders who have to use the system. So I want to thank you for this thing, but we'll bring you back sometime in the first quarter of 2018. I hope to see even greater improvements in the area of procurement, and we'll go from there. If any other board member has any questions, entertain it. Not, thank you very much.
Okay, so we have some more report and information items. On page 41 is information on Emergency Order 168. Following that, we have the MTA 2017 Semi-Annual Investment Report. And are there any questions on either of those two information items? And finally, we in September and October, we always include on the agenda the July plan preliminary budget 2018, just to allow the public to voice any opinions they may have. So next on the agenda, we have David Ross with procurements.
Yes, thank you, Doug. For headquarters, there are 5 competitive procurements for a grand total of $576,655,990. They're on pages 56 through 65, and I'm going to ask that Steve Plachaki and Al Putre present the new fare payment system contract, and the staff summary appears on page 60.
Good afternoon. The item recommended for award is a competitively negotiated design-build contract for a new fare payment system for New York City Transit, MTA Bus, Long Island Railroad, and Metro-North Railroad to Cubic Transportation Systems, Inc., in the total amount for board approval of $573.5 million, which includes the award of certain options with the base contract. This design-build contract will provide the MTA with a state-of-the-art, integrated, reliable, and convenient fare payment system to improve the customer experience by replacing disparate legacy systems in use at New York City Transit, MTA Bus, and the railroads with an integrated next-generation system. The new fare payment system will be an account-based, open payment system based on proven payment industry standards and open architecture principles, allowing customers to pay fares using diverse options, including mobile apps, digital wallets, contactless bank cards, and MTA-issued contactless transit cards. The NFPS will provide customers with multiple 24/7 self-service options for managing the accounts and options to purchase and reload fare media online and at local retailers. This contract covers the implementation of the new fare payment system as well as maintenance services and parts provisioning for the useful life of the system. The base contract will be for 12 years and 9 months, made up of 69 months consisting of multiple implementation phases, followed by 7 years of base contract support. The phased implementation will be described in a moment by my colleague, Al Putre. Options for extended services, if exercised, will extend the contract duration for 10 additional years after the 12-year, 9-month base contract, for a total contract term of 22 years, 9 months. Of the 3 finalists in the procurement, the selection committee unanimously selected Cubic for award. Cubic was ranked technically superior to the other competitors, being the only proposer to have implemented service-proven, account-based, open payment systems actively running at other locations. The Selection Committee also found that Cubic's proposed personnel displayed a command of the subject matter that was overall superior to that of the other proposer teams, and determined that the experience and qualifications of Cubic's proposed personnel were overall superior. Cubic's team demonstrated an understanding of the complexities and challenges of the work, which made the Selection Committee confident that Cubic will deliver a successful system within the required time frame. The Selection Committee unanimously selected Cubic as providing the best value to MTA. I'll now turn this over to Al Petray, who will walk you through the phased approach of the NFPS system.
Good afternoon. I'm going to provide a high-level overview of the new Fair Payment System implementation plan. This slide depicts the NFPS deployment schedule broken down into 5 strategic phases. Phase 1 will be completed in 18 months from notice to proceed. It includes the development and activation of the core back-end data center, which will support the tariffs and business rules agency-wide, the installation of bus and subway validators, and the Fare Control local area network for high-speed connectivity, as well as customer website for self-service account management. At the end of Phase 1, we will accept contactless open payments from mobile devices with digital wallets and bank-issued credit debit cards at 500 subway stations, and 500 turnstiles and 600 buses. So in short, subway and bus customers will be able to use the new fare payment system 18 months after notice to proceed. It is important to note that similar to the MetroCard rollout, where tokens were accepted until MetroCard was service proven, to minimize risk, we will follow that same format. MetroCard will run in parallel with the new fare payment system until the system has passed final acceptance testing. Phase 2 will be complete in month 35. It includes the SBS pilot, the installation of the remainder of the validators on buses and in the subway, as well as finishing the Fare Control local area network at all subway stations. At conclusion of this phase, New York City Transit customers will be able to experience end-to-end system travel on subways and buses using their choice of contactless open payments. Phase 3 will be complete in month 39. It includes the introduction of a robust retail network for sale and reload of the MTA-issued closed-loop contactless transit cards, launching the MTA all-agency mobile payment app, and the transitioning of the current Metro-North and Long Island Railroad e-TICS mobile ticketing customers into NFPS. Phase 4, which will be complete in month 52, includes the rollout of MTA agency-wide vending machines and Long Island Railroad and Metro-North specific ticket office machines. Because of the phased NFPS rollout approach, many of our customers will have already adopted contactless open payments using mobile devices and bank cards, MTA-issued media through the retail network, and the MTA mobile payment ticketing app. However, during Phase 4, with the installation of the new vending machines, our customers who do not want or cannot use any of the other methods of fare payment will be able to purchase an interoperable closed-loop MTA fare media product from an MTA vending machine at New York City Transit, Long Island Railroad, and Metro-North. Phase 5 will include full revenue system acceptance testing at month 56. Following successful NFPS testing, the legacy MetroCard, Long Island Railroad, and Metro-North fare systems will be decommissioned and removed by month 69. In closing, given that this project is based on design-build, many of the decisions regarding the specific operating methods will be finalized during the design process. However, if you have any questions, I will be happy to address them.
Commissioner Jones?
Yeah, just a brief question. The total cost of this is over $1 billion. Is that right?
The total cost, depending upon when we exercise which options, that is correct.
Okay. And when will the sort of second payment of $500 million have to come in?
The amount to be awarded is $573,487,
Right.
118 for today. Then there's 3 different options that we have identified. The rest go in different years. The base contract is 7 years. 5 years and 9 months is our base term with 7 years of hosting. That's built into the base. That's what we're awarding today.
Okay.
In addition, there are 2 5-year options after that. So it's going to be the 5-year 9 months plus the 7. That gets us to 12 years 9 months,
Right.
and then the rest. So the answer
So
to your question, it will be
the
12
next
years.
$500 million will come then?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Alpert?
Barring the widespread sale, which you showed in Phase 3 of the retail network, will every subway turnstile be converted in Phase 2 and available with some form of contactless card, not a phone app, but with a card?
Yes, the rollout consists of every single turnstile and every single bus being outfitted with a validator that will read both NFC communication and optical barcode readers. So it will do both, and it will be on every single end device in the system.
And if you wanted to purchase one of those cards, you would go to a booth at that point, or, I assume?
In Phase 3, we're going to deploy a robust retail out-of-system network.
I meant Phase 2, sir.
In Phase 2,
How would you get that card?
you would use, in Phase 2, you would use the bank card that you were issued from your own personal bank, or a mobile app similar to Apple Pay, Android Pay, Samsung Pay. The concept is we want you to bring your own fare media, and that's why the vending machines are in the latter part of the program. So by the time we issue our own card, which would be in Phase 3 from the retail network, you'd buy it out of system. Then when we put the machines in Phase 4, you'd buy it in system. But by then, most people have availed themselves of these other methods that they can get on their own.
So by 2020, banks will have the option of not just issuing you a regular credit or debit card, but an MTA card, which would allow you to do both things.
We've met with the major credit card issuers, and it's basically the chicken and the egg. They want to issue the cards, but they don't want to issue them without some means for them to be used. And right now, NFC communication is very limited, so some people have them, but it's not typically the card that's issued. When there's 8 million riders a day, that's a lot of transactions, and they're very motivated to provide that service to their customers.
You bet. Thank you.
Commissioner Paley?
Mr. Chairman, obviously, there's a phased-in, as you have clearly outlined, and the commuter railroads are later in the process than the subway system. I'm not arguing priority issue. I'm not arguing anything. I'm asking a question regarding compatibility issue. For many of my riders, obviously, they use the railroad and then they use the subway. So could you explain during what period of time they're going to need to have both systems operate? The current railroad system until you get to the railroad implementation, and the new subway system when you get to the new subway implementation?
So first off, as I mentioned, MetroCard will continue to operate, and the products we provide today via the joint ticket, which is a flash pass on one side for the railroads and a monthly or a value-based MetroCard on the other, will continue to be in place. The actual introduction of a method will be the rolling in of the eTix app. You currently have an eTix app for your railroad customers. In Phase 3, beginning in January of 20 and ending in January of 21, during that period, we will roll in all of your customers, and we will accept that eTix app at every turnstile on every bus validator in our system. So that will be the beginning of the adoption process. Subsequent to that, when the machines are deployed for Long Island Railroad, Metro North, and New York City Transit in Stage 4, you will then be able to avail yourselves of other type of media that will be interoperable between the railroads and New York City Transit.
So for a short period of time, you'll have two, I don't want to use the word two cards, that's not the correct terminology, but two different methods. After that short period of time, once 2020 comes, those people who now use e-ticket will have one. Am I
That's pretty much correct. Before e-tix is adopted, they'll be using the MetroCard for
Right.
the most part.
Right.
And once the e-tix is rolled in, then that will be a primary function they'll be able to avail themselves of. Eventually, though, in number 4, stage 4, there'll be other media that will be available that will work interoperable on both sides, and you won't need the MetroCard, and if you want the e-tix, you can keep it. If you want to go to another process, you can.
So starting at that point, a commuter rail rider who rides both the commuter rail and the subway could avail themselves of one system.
That's correct.
Thank you.
The gearing behind this is to be interoperable.
I understand. Thank you.
I'm going to give everyone a chance to go around once and then second. So, Commissioner Zuckerman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're here to approve over $500 million over the period of 12 or so years, and I do appreciate, sir, that you've been focused on design build for some time, so I appreciate that. This is probably lower than it would have been if we did it in a stepwise fashion. Could you just hypothesize for a moment for us about what could make this balloon in size over the relatively long period of time that we're setting this procurement up for, please?
Projects of this scope and magnitude typically fall into a couple of rabbit holes. One is scope change. Scope change results in change orders. Change orders generally result in inflated price. We've done a lot of work to avoid that, not the least of which is making this a functional specification. So it's up to the system integrator to determine the best solution to solve the problem. We didn't try and do it for them. They're the experts. The technology we procure should be the latest and greatest because we didn't spec it out 5 years ago and are only putting it on the table today. The next problem, in many cases, is delay. If you can't make decisions in a timely fashion, time is money. And projects, again, like this tend to incur delays. So my background is not to have delays. I've made some commitments to this organization. I intend to keep them. We've got a very strong project team. We've got an excellent consultant on board. They've worked in these projects in the past, and they're going to be with us from the beginning to end. So we need to avoid the delays. As far as what could cause a delay, the back end is sometimes an issue you want to focus on. And that's why this is a phased approach with steps and testing and integration. So we will be able to determine where we are at each process, not that we wait till one day and turn on and flip the switch and find out the damn thing doesn't work.
Commissioner Zuckerman, if it makes you sleep better at night, I've had extensive conversations with MTA senior leadership about not seeing scope change, because when you do design build, really the only two things that can drive up the cost is an act of God or a scope change. And the MTA's had enough time to figure out what it is we need and what it is we want. This is not about coming up with new toys or new areas of interest after it's been awarded. And there's a great expectation on the part of the winning bidder, as well as the staff at the MTA, that this project is going to stay on time and on budget. And as I said earlier, when I was talking about procurement reform and contract, sometimes as an agency, we're our own worst enemy. We get in the way of the contractor, and that's not going to happen here. Commissioner Reckley, did you have a question?
I did, yeah. Just first, just on thinking through the scope, just as you was done, obviously decisions were made in terms of phasing in the process, and like particularly phase 4, so there's redundancy and the give and take of when we phase in versus mandating all our customers move to the new system. What's, like, for example, the cost of the redundancy or multiple options that we're providing for phase 4? I mean, is that something that we should be considering, saying by 2021 or whatever that is at that date, that we should have maybe forego that extra flexibility and say everyone should be on this new system?
So the redundancy is really the MetroCard system.
But then you get past that, right?
So once we get past that, then we decommission MetroCard.
And then you said we're now providing our own separate system.
Okay, so there are methods of payment. Some are called open payment and some are closed. Open payment would be something you bring to the table that you have through your bank or through an app that you've downloaded on a mobile device. Not all our customers have bank accounts, and not all our customers have mobile devices. So we, by the nature of what we must do, we have to provide our own closed-loop product. So it's not that it's redundant. It serves a different segment of our population. Roughly 10% of our population is unbankable. Gotcha. So we will address those. And the closed-loop product does also give us some reliability factors in the sense that we do have our own medium no matter what.
Were there any elements of the scope that were questionable, that were big dollar amounts that we decided to go with or didn't go with that we should be aware of?
I don't think there are. I think the only thing we did is we built in some options that give us flexibility downstream, so we're not locked in. The contract has pricing in it out 20 years, so again, it was competitively bid. Procurement can get into more detail on this. These guys did a heck of a job making certain that we had as many assurances as we could, because we all know we don't like to be in a situation where we have to go to a vendor with our hat in our hand and saying, what's this going to cost me?
Right. Okay, good, thank you.
Now, one other thing, when you mentioned the $1 billion, that has in it some costs that technically are not costs associated with this contract. It's closer to, I think, about $880 million, not $1 billion. But the $1 billion would be if we, it's a commission structure. We pay our out-of-system retail vendors 2%, 2.5%. That would include that. But that doesn't go to this vendor. That's something aside. We accounted for it, though, as part of the process to be able to determine our full loaded cost.
Commissioner Ward, did you have a question or no? Peter? Okay. Commissioner, sorry, Susan. Go ahead.
I actually think that you've addressed my concern, but I'd like to hear it verbalized so that I'm sure. Technological change is happening exponentially now, as we know. There are things coming down the line that we can't even guess about, because even 10 years ago we weren't guessing at what we have available to us today. As the chairman's comments to Mr. Hibry suggest, sometimes we move at the pace of blind snails. This is a lengthy 20-year contract. It's my impression that there are going to be options later in the contract that we haven't perceived of yet. By basing the design build on the functionality of the product that we're buying, I'm assuming we have the flexibility to latch on to new technology as it comes, and we don't need to go through a new billion-dollar procurement.
So, go ahead.
That's correct. The contract terms and conditions specifically point out the latest available technology, so we're covered there through the design phase, as well as the notion that this is all plug-and-play technology. So when we look at this, the whole notion of being able to maintain this in the out years, things that we haven't particularly done well in the past, was envisioned here. So there's open architecture, there's open APIs, and a host of clauses that require the contractor or the integrator to be able to provide us with the latest and greatest as they roll this out.
Commissioner Jones?
Yeah, it's, when I first heard about this, I'm very excited about the idea. But obviously, we're in the midst of a crisis in terms of delays. I've wondered if there's anything we can tell the riding public as to, A, whether this may save money over the longer term or improve the nature of their commute.
So a couple of things. The existing MetroCard system has exceeded its life expectancy. So we were in a position where we really didn't have an opportunity where we could rehab what we had. So when we looked at this technology, one of the things we wanted to look at is how we could move some of our expenses outside of our domain. And having a customer bring the fare media versus us providing it, that's something we're interested in. Reducing the cash that we handle, that's something we're interested in. As an example, the contract to maintain the railroad machines, you currently have a contract with a company to maintain them. The bid price for the company that just won this award is $1 million a month less than what you're currently paying. So these are the kind of things we focused on. Overall, many of our policy decisions will ultimately determine our costs. So we're going to be coming back to you, and we're going to be coming back with options, and options can do many, many things, but sometimes they drive cost up. So we'll have to be cognizant of that and see how we want to proceed, because there's a lot of flexibility in this system.
Commissioner Alpert?
Yeah, it's there's so many good reasons to do this. I don't know where to start, but in response to Commissioner Jones, once MetroCard is phased out, you won't have to pay employees to clean the turnstiles. You won't have to be stuck behind someone who doesn't know exactly the right way to swipe, and so swipe again here, you know, all of that kind of stuff. You will have fare options between the subways and the commuter rails so new fare things can be offered. I mean, there's just so many good reasons to do this. Godspeed to you.
Thank you. We're all really excited about it as well.
And God help you if you fall behind schedule.
We got that too.
I think I said $1 million a year. It's $1 million a month. That's $1 million a year. I'm sorry about that.
The last thing I would add is that the Metro card, you'll notice, has a time limit on it because the stripe only has a certain time. If you damage the stripe, you're out of luck. With a contactless card, you don't have that issue.
Are you working for Cubic? All right. Carl, come here. Carl, can you speak into the mic? Please.
The debit cards, I assume that they're going to be issued by the bank.
Correct.
Is that, so we won't have to touch any of them, or the cash?
Well, if we use it, if a person doesn't have a bank account or access to a mobile device, then they're going to need to buy a card, and it'll be a card closed loop that we provide, and they'll have two methods of doing it. One would be through our out-of-system retail network, and the other would be through a vending machine that we would supply and we would run. So we would still have some cash.
You would. There's no way to get around that.
Under these conditions, there is always going to be, there's an old saying, cash is king. Well, some people actually believe that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, if there's no other questions, we, I guess, go on to the next item.
I'll keep going, David.
Sure. So, I'm sorry, the next one of the items that we have before you is the Bowery Residence Committee. It's for homeless outreach and case management systems. We did a competitive RFP, but we received only one proposal for this. Bowery Residence Committee has been providing these services for the city as well as the MTA. They serve the New York City Department of Homeless Services. They've provided satisfactory service to us, and about 88% of the money that we go to them goes to the people who are providing direct services in the system. So we attempted a competitive procurement. There were no other vendors that were interested in submitting proposals. We actually reached out to several providers that we thought might have proposed on this, and there was no interest. So anyway, it's a contract for $2,118,872 for the first year, and we have up to 6 years, 4 years plus 2 one-year options on this contract, and the services are provided for Metro North Railroad and Long Island Railroad both. Finally, there are AFT projects at 3 stations.
Can I ask you a question on that first?
Oh, sure.
What's the right to terminate on this contract?
Well, it's a 4-year contract, so the first 4 years, and the funding is actually determined on a year-by-year basis as budget's available.
So is there any clause in there that says we have a right to terminate, they have a right to terminate with a certain amount of notice? What if we don't like their performance in dealing with homeless issues after a year?
I'm not sure with the specifics, to be honest. I presume we have the standard termination for convenience language in this contract.
What's the standard termination clause language?
Sort of like it sounds, that we can terminate for convenience. We're only guaranteeing funding for the first year anyway.
All right. What I would like to make sure is that the Finance Committee gets at least a quarterly, if not semi-annual report on the progress that this contract, if we're awarded today, is making in addressing the homeless issue in our subway system.
Okay.
And railroad.
Keep going, right?
That was it?
Yeah.
Oh.
You have agency procurements.
So there are 5 competitive, so we're moving on to the next, the Metro North Long Island Railroad. There are 5 competitive procurements for Metro North. There are 4 items for a total of...
Wait. Did you do the station, enhanced station initiative? Because we have to act on that first before you move on to that.
Right, so AFT projects at 3 stations in Manhattan and the Enhanced Stations Initiative. For 57th Street F and 23rd Street F and M on the 6th Avenue line and 28th Street on the Lexington Avenue line. They're on page 59, competitive negotiated contracts. 627 proposals for 24 months, and it'll provide technical design, fabrication, crating, storage, delivery, and oversight of installation of materials at $350,000 each for stations at Alex Katz 57th Street Station, Nancy Blum 28th Street Station, and William Wegman at 23rd Street. So that's it.
Okay. So on these 5 competitive procurement items, any other further questions by any commissioner? If not, a motion to approve? Second? All those in favor? Any nays? Okay, let's move on to the next round of procurements.
Sure. So there are 5 competitive procurements for Metro North Long Island Railroad. Metro North, there are 4 items for a total of $123,965,075. And for the LIRR, there's 1 item for $89,859,236. All were awarded through RFP processes.
Larry, I think they need a motion.
Do we need motion? Second? All those in favor? Nay? So moved.
Now, Doug?
Okay, there's, for New York City Transit MTA bus operations, there's 1 action item for New York City Transit, with MTA Capital Construction requesting that the board approve the transfer of $150 million from savings in MTA Capital Construction's liability reserve and miscellaneous administration funds to provide additional contingency for construction, additional work orders, impact costs, claims, and soft costs needed on Phase 1 of the 2nd Avenue Subway project to support that project's completion.
Well, any questions? We have a motion. Do we have a second? All those in favor? Nays? Next, Dave. Doug?
Within New York City Transit MTA bus operations, there are 6 competitive procurements. David?
Right. 2 are requesting use of RFP process. 3 are modifications of existing agreements for extension and additional funding. 1 is requesting that the board declare competitive bidding impractical and inappropriate pursuant to Public Authorities Law 1209, subsection 9C, which allows the authority to dispense with competitive bidding in the event the authority receives no responsive bids or only a single responsive bid in response to an invitation for competitive bids.
Questions? Motion? Have a motion to approve? Second? All those in favor? Motion's carried. There are no items for bridges and tunnels, right?
Correct. No items for bridges and tunnels.
All right.
So that concludes the procurements. And Jeff Rosen?
Thanks, Doug. We have 5 real estate action items this month, each the subject of a separate staff summary in your books. I'd be glad to take questions about any of them. I would like to note that the Long Island Railroad development rights transaction proposed in the book will bring to a running total of $65 million the money we've generated to date for the capital program, taking advantage of development activity in Long Island Railroad. And frankly, we aren't to the beginning of the sort of major parcels there, so that's a credit to Bob Paley and his group, and particularly John Coyne.
Questions? Motion? Second? All those in favor? Any nays? Okay.
Thank you.
If there's no other questions, we need to make a motion for the Finance Committee to convene an executive session. Have a motion and a second. We go into executive session. I don't think anybody even needs to sit down. Can I have a motion to adjourn the Finance Committee? Second. All those in favor, aye. Thank you. Committee's adjourned.